Thanks for having me here today. Here's a snapshot of what I'll cover. I'll also save some time towards the end of the presentation for questions. I'd like to begin by sharing what SLELO PRISM is and how we're a part of a larger statewide network. The St. Lawrence Eastern Lake Ontario Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, or SLELO PRISM for short, is one of 8 PRISMs that span the state of New York, creating a network of partnerships as an integrative approach to invasive species management. The network is funded by the Environmental Protection Fund in coordination between the Department of Environmental Conservation and various host organizations. Since we're in Syracuse, I'd like to mention that the Finger Lakes PRISM circled above is the PRISM for this region. The SLELO region is highlighted in green, which encompasses the 5 counties of Oneida, Oswego, Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence. SLELO is hosted by the Nature Conservancy, and we collaborate with our partners to protect our lands and waters from the impacts of invasive species. The PRISM network acts as an invasive species information hub. Each PRISM has a website that holds valuable information so community members can learn about invasives threatening the region, best management practices, and of ways to get involved. There is also a statewide invasive species website that serves as an invasive species clearinghouse at nyis.info, where you can learn how to connect with your local PRISM and join their listservs to receive email announcements regarding invasive species threats to your region and other information. PRISMs also provide education and outreach to enhance public awareness of invasive species and encourage engagement. We host events, workshops, and trainings that are open to the public and often offer volunteer opportunities. PRISMs are also involved in the management of invasive species. However, we do not have the capacity to actively manage every invasive species everywhere. Therefore, we must prioritize. To aid prioritization, we utilize a statewide invasive species tiered system that includes species that are considered to have an impact on New York's ecosystems and are categorized by abundance and management feasibility, which may differ regionally. I'll share more about this later. SLELO PRISM's management efforts are focused on what we call priority conservation areas, or PCAs, which are areas identified by our partners to have high ecological value, such as wildlife management areas. We deploy early detection and rapid response strategies to find and control invasives within these PCAs. Prevention and restoration initiatives are also major priorities in our work. Before we dig too deep, let's start with the basics and consider what invasive species are. An invasive species can be a plant, animal, or even microorganism that is not native to the ecosystem they've become established in, and whose introduction causes harm to the economy, the environment, or to human health. The term invasive species can be easily confused, as there are many non-native species that are not considered to be invasive. For example, apples and many other agricultural plants are non-native species that are considered beneficial to our culture rather than harmful. There are also species that are considered to be a nuisance but are not invasive, like dandelions, for example. You may also wonder why some non-natives are so invasive. This has become because when a species is introduced to a new environment, they enter the new area free from environmental factors that keep their populations in balance, like natural predators. Invasives also often produce many offspring or seeds. For example, one adult purple loosestrife plant can produce millions of seeds annually. Invasives also have attributes that allow them to thrive in environments that other species may not do so well in, such as poor soil conditions. Pictured on the top right shows invasive Japanese knotweed growing right out of a hole in concrete. Because of these characteristics, invasive populations often become widespread, which you can see in the bottom picture that shows invasive common reed or Phragmites filling an entire field with a single shrub existing in the mass. If invasives are so bad for the environment, then why are they here to begin with? There are many different ways that species can be introduced to new areas. A major introduction pathway is through global trade. New York State is considered a national and universal hub for the introduction and spread of invasive species because of its many ports of entry that are used in global trade. Invasives from around the world can unknowingly hitchhike in ballast water and in shipments, often going undetected until they have spread far distances in their new homes. Often species are intentionally introduced for a variety of reasons, such as for beautifying landscapes or attempting to use exotic species for restoration, only to find out later that the species causes more harm than good. Invasive species can also be spread naturally by wind, water, or animals, but the rate and the distance in which invasives spread by natural means is much lower than by human activities. Invasive species are an important thing to consider when managing your forested land, as they can have devastating impacts that reduce the overall health of your forests, cause economic loss, and worsen the impacts of climate change. Pictured here are dead hemlock trees due to hemlock woolly adelgid infestations in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Invasive species will reduce the biodiversity of our forest by outcompeting native species and forming large monocultural populations. Loss of native biodiversity results in loss of ecological services that were once provided by the native species. For example, loss of trees would reduce the services they provide, such as water filtration, soil erosion control, the shade they provide to streams, keeping them cooler in hot summer months, so that trout and other aquatic wildlife can thrive. Invasive species are considered a significant cause of habitat loss, which can lead to regional and even widespread species extinction. There are many specialized relationships that exist between plants, birds, and pollinators. When invasive species take over an area, those relationships are impacted. For example, monarch butterflies need native milkweed to complete its life cycle. Without milkweed, monarch larvae die. Invasive swallowworts are closely related to native milkweed, and monarchs can get confused and lay their eggs on the invasive swallowwort, which is toxic to monarch caterpillars. Invasive species not only impact our environment, but they also cost lots of money to manage. A study conducted by the USDA estimates that invasive species have cost North America $26 billion per year since 2010. In New York State, within the Adirondack Park alone, the potential direct impact from just 8 selected invasive species were evaluated to cost up to nearly $900 million. Wood and phloem boring insects are anticipated to cost the largest economic impacts at $1.7 billion annually. And it is projected that there is a 32% chance that other highly destructive borer species will invade the US in the next 10 years. Climate change is the biggest challenge of our generation and likely many generations to come. Changing climate puts stressors on trees and can worsen the impacts of invasive species while also hindering the ability of our nation's forests to capture and store carbon dioxide, which in turn worsens the climate crisis. A recent study showed forest plots damaged by insect pests stored 69% less carbon. The loss of tree carbon storage in these disturbed forests is equivalent to the carbon dioxide emissions from over 10 million passenger vehicles driven for a year. That's a lot. 73% of the forested land in New York State is privately owned. This means that as forest owners, you have a big role to play in the overall health of our forests. Whether you spend time outside in your woods or just enjoy the beauty of your trees and wildlife from your window, you likely love your woods and want to keep them healthy. To help you do that, Celilo Prism has developed the Pledge to Protect, which is an easy way for you to learn how to protect your forest and favorite outdoor spaces from the impacts of invasive species. Upon taking the pledge, you become a protector. Right after taking the pledge, you get instant bragging rights along with collectible virtual badges. You receive exclusive monthly email blogs that provide simple actions you can take to protect your forest and other outdoor spaces from invasive species. There are also virtual resource toolboxes jam-packed full of information themed for specific environmental areas, including forests, lands, trails, waters, gardens, and communities. We also have a social media toolbox with pre-made graphics you can use to celebrate becoming a protector. There are also chances to win exclusive Pledge to Protect merchandise when you participate in trivia and other games included in selected monthly blogs. Visit ipledgetoprotect.org or scan the code to become a protector today. For the next few slides, I'm going to share actions and resources from our Pledge to Protect initiative with a focus on forests. You can access these resources inside the virtual toolboxes at ipledgetoprotect.org. Protecting your forests from invasive species can be a seemingly daunting task, but there are a few simple actions you can take to make it easier. First, learn what's on your land. By knowing what type of tree species are the most dominant on your land, you can then keep an eye out for certain invasives. For example, if you have large hemlock stands, you would want to learn to recognize the signs of hemlock woolly adelgid, an invasive insect that kills hemlocks. Learn what invasive species are threatening your forests in your region. As mentioned, each county in New York has a partnership for regional invasive species management that can provide information and management guidance. Prepare and prioritize. Learn what approaches are best for managing invasive pests that threaten the tree species of your forest. Take time to think about what tree stands hold the most value to you and the health of your forest. So if an invasive invades your forest, you can act fast and protect your most prized stands. Take a walk. Visit your land regularly to monitor for signs of forest pests. Keep your forest connected. Unfragmented forest stands are more resilient against the impacts of climate change, invasive species, and other stressors. Fragmented areas serve as prime areas where invasives can take foot. Enhance biodiversity and forest structure. Having a variety of tree species and diverse age groups enhances resiliency against a changing climate and invasive pests. By taking these actions today, you can help your forest to be more resilient, healthy, and productive in the face of climate change and invasive species now and for generations to come. There are resources available for you to learn more about what invasive species are considered to be invasive in New York. There is an invasive species tiered system developed by the New York Natural Heritage Program in collaboration with the PRISM Network that is used to identify species that are considered to have high negative impact. This system was mentioned earlier and utilized to guide invasive species management priorities. There are 5 tiers in which species are categorized within the system. Each tier signifies the best management strategy based on the species abundance and control feasibility. The tier allocated to species may differ between PRISMs. Tier 1 categorizes species that are not known to be present within the region, but are within a 10-mile radius of a PRISM boundary or a pathway exists. Tier 2 categorizes species that are in low abundance that eradication is feasible. Tier 3 categorizes species that are too widespread for eradication, but many surrounding regions could be at risk if left unattended. Tier 4 categorizes species that are too widespread for eradication, but localized management is recommended. Tier 5 categorizes species that need more monitoring to understand their impact and may include naturalized species. In addition to the tier system, there are lists for plants and animals that are prohibited and regulated for sale in New York State. New York also has an invasive species database called IMAP Invasives, which compiles statewide invasive species distribution data and has comprehensive categorized species lists where you can learn what is invasive in New York. If you encounter invasive species in your forest or wherever you enjoy the outdoors, report observations to New York's or to IMAP Invasives. You can report observations from a smartphone or using the free smartphone device using their free mobile app, or you can report to their website. Observations are reviewed by invasive species professionals and are available for the public. By reporting observations to IMAP, you're helping to record the distribution of invasive species across the state, which enhances management efforts. To learn more about IMAP and to make a free user account, visit their website at nyimapinvasives.org. These are some of the resources showcased in our Forest Protectors Toolbox that can help you enhance the health and resiliency of your forests. Cornell University's New York State Hemlock Initiative has developed a tool to help forest owners and managers prioritize hemlock stands to manage and prepare for an HWA, hemlock woolly adelgid infestation. Celilo Prism is hosting a workshop on this topic on March 8th at 1 p.m. You can get details and sign up to join us by visiting our website's events page. The Nature Conservancy and other partners have developed a Keep Forests Healthy scorecard. This tool can be used as a self-guided assessment to determine the level of risk your forest may be susceptible to in a changing climate. The tool also provides strategies to enhance the resiliency of your forest against invasive species and other environmental stressors. I have some printed copies of the scorecard available here today. Celilo Prism has developed an urban forest sustainability guide to help communities sustain urban forest health by maintaining diverse, climate adaptable, and invasive species resistant trees. And finally, the Nature Conservancy's invasive plant management decision analysis tool helps natural resource managers to determine the feasibility of invasive plant control projects. All of these resources are available in our Pledge to Protect virtual toolboxes. There are many invasive species known to be in New York State. I have cherry-picked a few species to share with you today, most of which have been identified by that tiered system I mentioned earlier, but there are many more invasive species that are known to be present in the state that you can learn about. The first species I'm going to focus on is active this time of year and is recognized as a Tier 4 in the Finger Lakes region and is confirmed present in Onondaga County by IMAP invasives. Hemlock woolly adelgid, or HWA, is an invasive insect native to Japan that kills hemlock trees. HWA threatens eastern and Carolina hemlocks. Damage occurs due to the incision of the insect's mouth parts or the stylet into the woody tissue where the needle connects to the twig. This causes a reaction in the tree to wall off the area, which disrupts the flow of nutrients to the needles, causing them to dry out, turn gray, and fall off. Infested hemlocks will die within 2 to 5 years, depending on the density of the infestation if they aren't treated. Signs of infestation include the presence of white woolly masses along the twigs where the needles connect. These masses are most prevalent during the winter months when HWA is actively feeding. Other signs include needle loss or graying and lack of new growth in the spring. HWA can be treated chemically with a soil drench or basal bark spray. There are also biocontrol agents in the form of lady beetles and 2 species of silverflies that are being researched at the Cornell University Biocontrol Lab through the New York State Hemlock Initiative. Releases of these biocontrol agents have occurred in New York State. As mentioned, you can join us on March 8th for a webinar discussing how to prepare for and manage HWA in your forest. Spotted lanternfly, or SLF, is a Tier 2 species in the Finger Lakes region and is confirmed present in Syracuse on the New York State Integrated Pest Management Distribution Map. This is a high-profile early detection species throughout New York State. Despite its name, spotted lanternfly is a plant hopper native to Asia. It feeds on nearly 70 different plant species. There is high concern of the impacts SLF will have on New York's grapes, apples, and hops, maple and walnut trees, which are each economically significant crops for the agricultural industry in New York and across the nation. The appearance of SLF changes depending on its life stage cycle. There are 4 nymphal stages of SLF, which begin in the spring with black nymphs with white spots that turn red just before becoming colorfully winged adults in the summer. Adults are present until cold weather hits and egg laying occurs in the fall. Females lay 1 to 2 egg masses, each containing 30 to 60 eggs, which overwinter and hatch the following spring. Eggs are a good indicator of the presence of SLF. Females lay their eggs in rows covered in a waxy white to gray colored putty-like substance. Eggs can be laid on any flat surface that is exposed to the outdoors. Another indicator that SLF is present is the formation of mold underneath plants. This is caused by SLF feeding and excreting honeydew, which attracts stinging insects and creates perfect environment for sooty molds. These molds hinder the plant's ability to photosynthesize, which reduces the crop yields and can cause plant mortality. The best mode of control for SLF is prevention. SLF is easily spread by hitchhiking to new areas on vehicles, firewood, outdoor furniture, stone, and others. Be sure to check your vehicle and gear when traveling from or stopping within known quarantine areas, and monitor for signs of SLF on their favorite host plant tree of heaven, young black walnut, wild grapevines, and orchard trees, and other popular hosts for spotted lanternfly. The elm zigzag sawfly is a newer invasive species that can be detected in New York State. It has recently become confirmed in St. Lawrence County and is considered a Tier 2 species in the Scleroprism region. Elm zigzag sawfly is an invasive insect native to Asia that feeds exclusively on elm trees and is mostly spread through infested nursery stock. Its common name comes from the zigzag feeding pattern of its larvae. Larvae are very small. They are light green in color with a black band on their head with T-shaped markings above the second and third pair of true legs. Adults are black with yellowish white colored legs and smoky brown colored wings. Although the sawfly has not yet been shown to cause tree mortality, the feeding of the larvae can cause significant defoliation, branch dieback, and crown thinning on infested elm trees. Infested trees are also more vulnerable to other tree pests and pathogens, which may cause a cascading impact on forest ecology, the economy, and societal values. Prevention and early detection are considered to be the best control methods at this time. Emerald ash borer, or EAB, is likely familiar to you and is considered a Tier 4 species in the Finger Lakes region and is widespread in Onondaga County and throughout New York State. EAB larvae feeds on the cambium layer of ash trees, drilling S-shaped tunnels that stop the flow of nutrients in the tree. Infestations of EAB also significantly reduce the strength of tree branches, making them brittle and a hazard in areas where they may lose large limbs and in walking trails in urban areas. Signs of infestation include increased woodpecker activity that causes strips of bark to be removed and a checkerboard-like pattern, epicormic shoots, and thinning tree canopy. EAB adults are smaller than the size of a nickel and can be and have an emerald green outer shell with a reddish colored abdomen underneath its wings. Larvae are white to cream colored, flattened, and have bell-shaped segments. There are regulations in place for ash timber products that are available at the New York State DEC website, along with restrictions of the movement of firewood more than 50 miles to help reduce the spread of EAB. Chemical soil drenches or soil and bark injections are effective for 1 to 3 years and require continued treatment. However, this method is not feasible for large woodlots. There's also research being done at SUNY ESF for the use of parasitoid wasps to control EAB. Releases of these wasps have occurred in regions throughout New York State. Forest owners who have ash stands with 40 or more mature trees on their property that are not treated chemically can participate in the Monitoring and Managing Ash, or MAMA, program, which is a community science program where participants can monitor ash stands for ash trees that have survived an EAB infestation called lingering ash. Identified lingering ash aids conservation through selective breeding research being led by the Ecological Research Institute in collaboration with USDA Forest Service. Invasive bittersweet is a Tier 4 species in the Finger Lakes region. It is a deciduous woody perennial vine that is native to Asia. Invasive bittersweet can be distinguished from Native American bittersweet by the berries, which are present in mature plants in the fall. Invasive bittersweet has red berries with a yellow capsule that form in clusters along the stems, whereas Native American bittersweet have red berries with reddish-orange colored capsules that form in clusters at the ends of the twigs. Oriental bittersweet outcompetes trees, shrubs, and other vegetation through climbing and shading. It may also kill trees by strangling or girdling them, and the berries are easily spread by birds. It can be controlled by cutting the vines close to the ground and digging up the roots. Avoid pulling vines out of the trees as this can damage the tree or cause yourself injury. Cut stems that aren't dug out should be treated with an herbicide after cutting. An herbicide application can be applied to cut stems as a foliar application and is best done in the fall when the plant is naturally drawing the chemical to its roots more effectively. Beech leaf disease is a newer threat to beech trees, and research is still undergoing to learn more about its cause, spread, and management. It's currently not categorized within a tier for the Finger Lakes region on the New York State tiered list, but the best management approach for this species is to monitor for signs of presence and report observations to IMAP invasives. Beech leaf disease causes leaf disfiguration, and the symptoms are believed to be caused by a nematode. Symptoms include striping between leaf veins, curling, and a leathery texture, depending on how long the tree has been infected. These signs may be visible year-round, as some beech trees may hold their leaves in the winter. Some survey tips include looking at the underside of the leaves. Look for dark bands that run along the leaf vein. If found, take photos of the underside of the leaf with the light shining through. If found, report to IMAP. Look for beech leaf disease nematode. Of course, my fucking pen is going. Japanese knotweed is a tier 4 in the Finger Lakes region, confirmed present in Onondaga County via IMAP. This is an upright, shrubby perennial herb with bamboo-like stems. If you have stems in your forest, Japanese knotweed could easily become established. If you have streams within your forest, Japanese knotweed could easily become established along the stream sides and in areas where your forest is nearby farm fields or other disturbed areas. It has a large oval-shaped leaf that form in a zigzag arrangement along stems. Flowers are showy and white in color and appear in sprays along the stems in the summer. Mowing is not recommended, as fragments can resprout whenever touching the soil. It is most effective to cut back the plant through the growing season, taking care to remove plant parts, and then in the fall, when plants are drawing most of their nutrients to the roots, apply the herbicide to the leaves or do a stem injection. Swallowwort is a tier 4 species and is confirmed present in Onondaga County. This is the final species I'm going to showcase today. Black and pale swallowworts are perennial herbaceous vines. They release chemical compounds that have a negative effect on other plants. Once introduced to a forested area, it can completely cover the understory and greatly hinder forest regeneration. Pale swallowwort is most common in New York. It has an oval to lance-shaped leaf that grow opposite the stem. Star-shaped purplish pink to pink colored flowers that are visible May through July, and slender pointed seed pods that begin to emerge in July and open to disperse downy seeds in August and September. Swallowwort is very difficult to eradicate once large populations have been established. Repeated mowing and chemical applications repeated annually will suppress populations. There is research being done to learn if a moth called Hypena opulenta could serve as a viable biocontrol agent in New York State. Next, I'm going to share some ways that you can get involved. A great way to get involved is to volunteer. Celilo Prism has an invasive species volunteer surveillance network where you can be trained to recognize and report invasive species threatening the Celilo region to IMAP. We also have opportunities to assist terrestrial and aquatic invasive species removal and restoration efforts. We have a sign-up form on our website, or you can scan this QR code. A fun and easy way to get involved is to take the Pledge to Protect, which I mentioned earlier. If you're interested in taking the pledge today, visit ipledgetoprotect.org or scan the QR code. You can learn more about our work and of upcoming events and connect with us on our website and social media. Just happened here.